Today, we're diving into a really wild idea from the book, The Network State. It's a vision where the next great country isn't founded on land, but on the internet. So let's get right into it. I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But that's the core question this book asks us to wrestle with. So forget everything you know about conquistadors or revolutions in muddy trenches. The book wants you to imagine a totally new kind of pioneer. Someone who builds a nation first as a digital community, a country that lives entirely in the cloud, before it ever even thinks about touching the ground. So you might be asking, why even think about something so crazy? Well, the whole idea starts right here, with a pretty grim diagnosis of our current moment. The book argues that we're living through a period of, deep decay and transition. It says that the systems we've always relied on are failing, and there's this feeling everywhere that things are in decline. This sense of an ending is basically the fertile ground where new ideas, like the network state, can start to grow. Okay, so to really get the solution being proposed, we first have to look a little closer at the problem as the author sees it. The argument is that modern society isn't just creaking under the strain, it's actively and maybe violently tearing itself apart. According to the book, trust in the big institutions that used to hold us all together, government, media, you name it, has basically evaporated. Society is fracturing into these hostile tribes to the point where some people are seriously calling for a national divorce. And think about it. When people can't even agree on what happened in the news yesterday, let alone the history of their own country, what you get is a society that's not just divided. It's being spun apart with incredible force, kind of like a centrifuge, separating every little piece into its own isolated layer. So what's causing this powerful society shredding force? Well, the book gives us this really interesting historical framework to explain it all. It's centered on three huge organizing powers, or leviathans as he calls them, that have shaped human history. For most of human history, right, the ultimate authority wasn't a king or a government. It was God. People behaved themselves not just because they were scared of earthly punishment, but because they truly believed in an all-seeing, all-powerful deity who was enforcing a moral code. That shared belief was the invisible glue holding everything together. But as belief in God started to fade, a new power rose up to take its place: the state. In the 20th century, big ideologies like communism and nationalism pretty much became the new religions. They demanded absolute faith and became the central organizing principles for hundreds of millions of people, which led to those massive state-on-state wars that really defined that whole era. And that brings us to right now. The author argues a third Leviathan has shown up, the network. Things like the internet, encryption, and crypto have created this whole new sphere of power that's decentralized and totally global. It's a force that can just route around a state's laws, its borders, and all its controls. For the first time in a long time, the state is no longer the only game in town. So this timeline really shows you that handoff of power over the centuries. And that conflict we're all feeling today, that societal centrifuge, the book says that's the sound of a titanic struggle between the old Leviathan of the state and the new Leviathan of the network. Now, this struggle, the book warns, could lead us to one of two really bleak futures if we don't find a better way forward. It's basically a choice between two very different kinds of dystopia. On one side, you have what the book calls American anarchy. This is a future where the fight between different networks and a weakening state just spirals into total chaos. Social trust completely dies, and society just dissolves into endless infighting. Then, on the other side, you have Chinese control, a hyper-centralized surveillance state that manages to create stability, but at the absolute cost of freedom, where all physical and digital exits are completely blocked. The book argues that there's a third way. There's a path that isn't about choosing between anarchy or tyranny. And that path is to actually proactively build something new, the network state. So, what in the world is a network state? Well, think of it as a nation that's incubated online first. It starts as a social network with a really strong sense of shared purpose. It has its own internal crypto economy, and, this is key, it has a concrete plan to crowdfund physical territory, to link the digital world to the real one. And the book actually lays out a four-step process. First, you found a startup society online, all united by one powerful shared belief. Second, you organize that community into what's called a network union, something that's capable of taking collective action. Third, you build a network archipelago by crowdfunding and linking up physical properties all over the globe. And the final and maybe hardest step is to achieve sovereignty by getting diplomatic recognition from at least one existing government. Now, how these startup societies could actually work is by focusing on what the author calls the one commandment. So instead of a super complicated constitution, each society is founded on a single, super clear moral principle. For instance, a keto kosher society might just ban processed sugar. An FDA-free zone would be built entirely on total medical freedom. Or a digital Sabbath community could be focused on helping people reclaim their attention from the internet. So when you put all these pieces together, you get a vision that really just fundamentally changes our whole definition of what a country even is and how one is born in the first place. Okay, so here's the bottom line, the most crucial point of the whole book. The argument is that our energy is better spent building new parallel systems rather than trying to reform the old failing ones. The network state is a proposal for peaceful creation and voluntary exit. It's this idea that instead of fighting over the old map, we can just start drawing a new one, starting with a community in the cloud. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. In an age where our digital communities often feel more real and more important than our geographical ones, it kind of forces you to ask, could the successor to the nation state already be forming in a Discord server or a crypto network or some Substack community? Is it possible the next great nation is being built online as we speak?